System exploitation is a type of attack where an attacker takes advantage of known vulnerabilities or weaknesses in software or hardware. There are three specific types of system vulnerabilities or system exploitations. This include backdoors, software exploitation, and buffer overflows. A backdoor is an unprotected access method or pathway, so it's one which is not addressed by your security mechanisms or your security policy. These may be developer installed that allow for easier debugging, or they may simplify distribution of software updates. An example of this would be if you have a PBX telephone system installed and the vendor periodically dials up to a modem, connects in, and updates the software of your PBX system. The problem with this type of backdoor is that this modem could be taken over by attackers or used by someone illegitimately, plus the actual process of updating software could actually cause a problem because not all software updates are always going to be successful. Another type of backdoor could be hacker installed. This is a type of tool that could be put in place in your system through a Trojan horse or a virus that gives the attacker the ability to remote control or remotely infiltrate your system and gain access and control over it. Another type could be a device backdoor. This would be a physical connection port such as a console port, maintenance modems, or even open connection ports that if someone's able to gain physical access to and brings a terminal with them or a PDA, they could connect in to your devices and change the configuration. Countermeasures to backdoors include very detailed auditing, so you're able to discover when activities take place, deploying antivirus and malicious code scanning software tools, so you're able to detect when these type of things are planted or present on your system. Specifically for malicious code, malicious user or hacker installed backdoors, you need to have strong access controls, and you also want to have strong software installation restrictions, so only legitimate software is installed. For developer installed backdoors, you want to find them, disable, and maybe even change the default accounts and block access to these accounts except for legitimate users. And then for device backdoors, you want to maintain and control physical access, because if they can't physically gain proximity to the device, those open ports for access will be protected. The next type of system exploitation would be software exploitation. This is where you exploit the vulnerabilities or flaws in software themselves. More often than not, these are programming errors or programming oversights where the programmer failed to properly code the software, so there are problems with it, and attackers discover these and use them against you. One common example of this would be cross-site scripting. This is where an attacker is able to convince a website to transmit web documents to web visitors that contain malicious code. This code can perform a wide range of functions, including capturing or stealing credit card information. Another specific example of software exploitation is a buffer overflow. A buffer overflow is when an attacker takes advantage of a vulnerability or a programming error in software or an operating system. This specific vulnerability is where the programmer failed to set boundary limitations on how much data or what type of data could be inputted into an application. Unfortunately, this extra data is often sent into the CPU and executed in privilege mode, which means it's given complete and total access to the system. A buffer overflow attack can result in numerous types of results, including denial of service attacks by rendering the system inoperable, causing system freezing or rebooting. It can also grant the attacker unrestricted access to the entire system. Let me show you an example of a type of buffer overflow attack. If an attacker is attacking a web server specifically, a type of attack could be a URL that is containing too many letters or too many characters than what the web server itself is able to support. Let's say, for example, I have a web server that's able to process a URL that has up to and only including 200 characters. So I could build a URL that has 200 or more characters. Let's say I build a URL that has 208 extra characters. Well, the web server will be able to process the first 200 characters of that URL, but the rest of it will be spilled over into the CPU. This particular extra bit of information I've submitted will be executed with the system level access, and therefore will be able to perform any function in the system whatsoever without restriction. So if it happens to be delete every file, then basically this buffer overflow attack will result in every file in that system being destroyed and erased. Obviously, buffer overflow attacks are a serious problem. Some specific buffer overflow attack countermeasures include setting strict programming quality controls so that programmers always include boundary limitations on what data can be inputted and what type of data can be inputted before it's processed by the program or operating system. Deploying host-based intrusion detection systems can help determine when a buffer overflow attack is being attempted, when software exploitation occurs, or when a backdoor has been used. You can also employ file system encryption, strict access controls, and auditing to detect and prevent various types of system exploitations.